This man is Korean, but owns the largest oil field in Saudi Arabia. Even the royal family has to be humbled. Daug's daily luxurious life is far beyond your understanding. The only road in the desert built specifically for him. The king always closely watched Daug's actions. The king always wanted to marry the princess to him, to intermarriage. But the king did not expect that Daugh would immediately refuse, because he accidentally learned that he had a daughter he had never met in 35 years. The entire royal family suddenly became chaos, but the king insisted that Daugh and the princess get married within a month. If not, the king would confiscate all of his assets and oil fields. In fact, even Daugh himself found it hard to believe. He was happily living a single life when he suddenly had a 35-year-old daughter. Daugh rented a plane to return after many years of separation. Right at night, on the plane, his rich aura made the flight attendant fall in love. She knelt down beside him. He smiled brightly like a flower. If his assistant Abdallah wasn't there, the beauty would just want to sit right on his lap. But now, in addition to his daughter, who has never met, he is even more curious about his son-in-law, who works at a bank named Ho Rim. On normal days, Ho Rim admires most a high school classmate who is a senior leader and has a rich father-in-law. As for his out-of-shape wife, he is always disgusted and willful. Avoid, so the desire for adultery also rekindles in the bottom of his heart, even though he has been married for 10 years, or even though his wife always has to endure frustration and hardship at her husband's house. The trip Ji-young hopes waiting for 10 years, it finally came true. But the airport suddenly announced the postponement of all flights due to being affected by the storm. Hearing that, Ho Rim couldn't help but secretly rejoice. Ji-young immediately got angry on the spot. It was her first time on a plane, and also her first time traveling, but it had to end like this. The tour guide changed attitude and called Ji-young was an ant right in front of many people. This made the already angry Ji-young even angrier. She rushed towards him and posed for everyone to take photos for evidence to request a refund. Ho Rim felt embarrassed and quickly ran away. Daugh had just returned country when he saw this scene. This was the first time he had seen such a woman in his life, without knowing that this meticulous and calculating ant was his biological daughter, who had been separated for 35 years. Ho Rim stood on the floor and eavesdropped. But the heart that misses the goddess can no longer hold back. As soon as he heard that the goddess was at the airport, he was scared and immediately hung up. At that moment, he saw his wife and child walking towards him. Ho Rim panicked and turned around to run away. Then he quickly contacted again with the goddess. Hearing that he had the opportunity to go to Japan and soak in hot springs with goddess, he was as excited as a young man in passionate love. He did not know that there was an important person sitting next to him. It is true that adultery is also so labor-consuming. The two don't look at each other, but understand the little thoughts between men. And so Daugh and her daughter just pass each other's shoulders like two strangers, until late at night, he saw a little girl wearing a red dress. Daugh was imagining his daughter's appearance when she was a child, so he went over and danced with this girl, and Ji-young had not yet fulfilled her wish. When she returned, the family was ridiculed by her mother-in-law and younger sister-in-law. Ho Rim did not say to help her, but ran away. The next day, Abdallah went to the detective to get information about Daugh's daughter and accidentally learned about the son-in-law's affair. The detective had saved all the information related to the adulterer on a memory card, but Abdallah was not interested in this at all and only took documents related to the Daugh's daughter, then left. Coincidentally, the goddess that Ho Rim had an affair with had the same name as Ji-young. When Ho Rim arrived at the meeting place carrying fresh flowers, two Ji-youngs appeared there. At the same time, Daugh's car also arrived. He thought to himself, is it his daughter? The Earl never dreamed that his biological daughter, whom he had never met, would be beaten down by life and become this old and barren. Just eating cheap beef with her daughter made her feel that is a delicacy in the world, while her husband is on a date with someone else at a high-class restaurant, enjoying premium steaks and wine, enjoying the romantic world of two people. Only the stupid girl is always at home preparing dinner and waiting for her husband to come home with their daughter, while Ho Rim excitedly walks around the shopping center with Ji-young, seeing expensive dresses, expensive designer bags, going to the skincare counter. A bottle of night cream costs millions of won. He came up with an idea to protect his wallet, so he chose first a bottle of something and then asked for 2 more bottles. By the way, also won Ji-young's smile. while Ji-young still waited stupidly at home until the night before going to bed. Early the next morning, Daugh came the bank Ho-rim worked at asked to meet him. This made Ho-rim a bit confused. Daugh directly said that he was the father Ji-young had never met, who had been exploiting oil in Saudi Arabia for many years. Because he was afraid that his daughter would resent him, so he hoped that Ho-rim could praise him in front of his daughter. He also told them to come to his kingdom to play. Listening to 2 words from the kingdom where Ho-rim didn't even have time to be happy for a minute. Daug's next words suddenly slapped him awake. It turned out that the girl Daugh mentioned was the head of the television production team, who spent all day looking for excellent writers from scripts. Ho-rim was stunned when he heard that. The more Daugh described, the more unstable he became. The Ji-young that Daugh mentioned was not Ji-young in his family. In the end, Daugh threw a bomb right in his face. Ji-young became the lucky child who was the object of the affair, not his wife. Ho-rim thought to himself that he wanted to be frank to gain leniency, but did not want Tree that shed money he had just taken to disappear before he could get his hands on it. While he was confused in the end, he chose to stay silent. Daugh waved his hand and immediately invested 1,200,000 in the bank, even personally requesting to transfer it under the name Ho-rim. The unexpected joy made a person who was originally a punching bag like Ho-rim suddenly become famous throughout the company. The director also considered him first. But when Ho-rim talked about the family situation with Daugh, he portraying her harsh and cruel mother as a kind and honest mother-in-law. In reality, she is a gambler who gambles all day and only waits for Ji-young to come home from work and cook. Even if her granddaughter is hungry, the baby just able to eat shrimp noodles. Sister-in-law, who lives downstairs, often come to the house arbitrarily to get stuff. Heard that the daughter has no biological mother and has to live with both her mother-in-law and younger sister-in-law. Just thinking about it, Daugh knows what's her situation like. People often say there's nothing money can't solve. Daugh took Ho-rim around to designer stores to choose clothes for her daughter. Just one outfit costs millions of won. Ho-rim was extremely surprised. As a result, Daugh just had to point at something or look at any clothes and pack them all up to take away. This is the way life should be. Daugh told Ho-rim to learn to get used to it with aristocratic life. Then Daugh took him to change his appearance. After several times trying on all kinds of clothes, he finally chose a suit that suited his bad boy temperament, which made Detective Han, who was always following them, was confusing. Even dreamed that he didn't expect Daugh to treat the adulterous son-in-law so well. Daugh then took Ho-rim to a car store. Whether it's a luxury car or a sports car, as long as Ho-rim likes it, Daugh will buy it for him. A lifelong desire that is hard for many people to achieve, but he can easily get it. But even so, for Daugh, no matter how much money he has, there is no way to make up for his daughter's 35 years of disadvantage. Ho-rim immediately revealed his true colors. Even though in his eyes money is omnipotent, having a famous and wealthy father of such status, and also took the initiative to find daughter who was truly a god of talent descended from heaven. Daugh enjoyed his words very much. Abdallah suddenly remembered what Detective Han said. This is the evidence of his son-in-law's infidelity. He also had another woman. Along the way, Ho-rim was so happy that he unconsciously curled his lips. He is also very confident about helping Daugh meet daughter. His life also changed from here. Suddenly the phone rang, breaking the already happy atmosphere. As soon as Ho-rim saw Ji-young at home, it was as if he fell from heaven to hell. Daugh saw that it was his daughter's phone called. He then signaled Ho-rim to quickly answer the phone, forcing Ho-rim to only reluctantly answer the phone. Daugh conveniently turned on the speakerphone. Ji-young asked him where he was and quickly go home and clean the house. Suddenly the child asked, "Mommy, is that Dad?" The appearance of the baby made him almost reveal his identity. It was very difficult for him to make up the reason that it was the voice of the AI. So he succeeded being able to outwit Daugh. Ho-rim tried to suppress the uneasiness in his heart and sighed. When he got home, he started hanging around Ji-young. He asked her if her father was still alive. Ji-young just heard and guessed that he was craving money to the point of going crazy, but Ho-rim still refused to give up. He was delusional about whether Daugh would ever really be his father-in-law. Ji-young was angry and thought her mother-in-law was causing trouble. Her mother-in-law criticized the orphan all the time, and the two kept arguing with each other like that. Ho-rim also arrogantly shouted loudly and constantly complained about how hard he worked every day. He even shamelessly blamed that their miserable life is due to Ji-young. Late at night, Ji-young has a little time to continue writing stories that she loves, but her husband's words made her unable to concentrate. Only when she is with her daughter can she soothe a little. The next day, Ho-rim wanted to speak frankly about his father-in-law Daugh with Ji-young, but didn't know how to open his mouth. Ji-young thought he wanted to break break up, so she immediately told Ho-rim to break up. After speaking, she turned around and walked away without any attachment. Seeing that Ho-rim quickly pulled her back and told her about her father misunderstanding him as his son-in-law, as well as Daugh waiting to meet her at the restaurant, as it was true. Ji-young-bi emphasized that she was an illegitimate child. She didn't even know who her biological father was. Ji-young-bi thought he was joking, so she didn't care at all, let alone Rich Earl consider they were a couple. But when Ho-rim told them about the DNA test results, Ji-young-bi momentarily didn't know what to do. Ho-rim was even more afraid that Daugh would find out that he was married, afraid that he will not be able to see the sun tomorrow. Both of them fall into a mess of troubles that suddenly appeared. After many years of suffering, today the long-suppressed Ji-young went to a nightclub to let loose for the first time. Ho-rim, he was extremely surprised by this sudden change in her. Even in his wildest dreams, he never expected that his wife could be like this. But this impulsive moment caused Young A to get drunk and mistakenly get into Dahlgu's car. Abdallah recognized her at a glance, but did not speak. Seeing Ho-rim chasing her, he quickly closed the car door to hide. But when Dahlgu a little bit got drunk in the car home, he found a drunken ant with a big rough thigh in his car. This indescribable image made Dahlgu immediately angry. He immediately asked Abdallah what was going on. Abdallah said that this girl is not suitable for you, Count. Abdallah's off-topic answer made Dahlgu angry, didn't know what to say. But Abdallah was surprisingly calm. He conveniently pushed the responsibility of getting people into the car to Dahlgu. Abdallah also told him over and over again to maintain an elegant demeanor, making Dahlgu extremely angry. Dahlgu insisted on throwing Ji-young A out of the car, but Abdallah's attitude was different from usual. Abdallah insisted on taking the drunk Ji-young A to the police station. In the end, Dahlgu couldn't win, so he just let Abdallah study doing good deeds. Ji-young drank until she was drunk and thought he was a bad person, so she was scared, crawled and risked her life to run away. Seeing a big tree in front of, she suddenly thought it was a man's thigh and hugged it tightly, didn't let go. Perhaps because of their close blood relationship, Dahlgu couldn't help but step forward to help Ji-young A up. Didn't expect to be punched by her for one shot and then ran away without saying a word. The younger sister-in-law just said that craved steamed dumplings. The mother-in-law made the daughter-in-law do it right away. Ji-young A doesn't have her mother's house to back her, so she just has to endure patiently. The mother-in-law said the daughter to go home and wait for the meal to be ready. Mother-in-law not only does not come out to help, but is always picky. By the time Ji-young finished steaming the dumplings, the mother had long since fallen asleep. Ji-young put the cooked dumplings and brought them to her younger sister-in-law, and finally got a box of kimchi in return that she didn't eat. She didn't even forget to make an appointment to change to kimchi dumplings next time. Ji-young A could only suppress her anger, while Ji-young B was happily holding flowers in her hand to meet the rich father. The first time father and daughter met, Ji-young B was a little reserved, but showed a little sadness. Since she was a child, she didn't know who her father was. At this moment, she really thought that Dahlgu in front of her was her biological father. She has always been waiting for love from her father for a long time, so now she unconsciously calls father. Dahlgu feels unfamiliar, but quickly adjusts. But the atmosphere that was originally harmonious almost falls apart when it comes to the son-in-law. When Dahlgu took out the photo, Ji-young B realized that the woman holding the baby in the photo was not her mother, and the dead mother of the baby that Dahlgu spoke of didn't match her hospitalized mother. She was completely frightened. Dahlgu asked about the father that her mother talked about. She also wanted to know, but her crazy mother could only provide little information for her. The mother said her father was tall and very rich. Dahlgu was surprised. She completely exposed herself with just one sentence, because in the past, Dahlgu was just a poor young man at the bottom of society, and Ji-young's mother was his first love that he will never forget in this life. Ji-young B returned home and started trying to find pictures of herself as a child, but no matter what, it didn't match. Reality made her fall from heaven to the bottom of the abyss in an instant. The beautiful dream bobbing like a train roller coaster, but the truth is clearly in front of her. In another development, the more the detective thinks, the more he doesn't understand why the adulterous woman now drives a sports car, and her biological daughter has become a miserable aunt. After investigating, he discovered that someone had edited the document he gave to Abdallah. The detective was extremely surprised. He did not expect that Assistant Yang mixed up the document between the two people. Realizing the mistake, she immediately knelt down to ask for forgiveness. Dahlgu was a little suspicious, so he decided to personally investigate the orphanage where Ji-young had lived since he was a child. At the same time, Ji-young B received a mysterious call. The person behind the false story daughter appeared. Of course, there are no free meals in this world. Yang Yang is originally Saudi Arabia's top spy and hacker, and the assistant is just an identity to cover the eyes of others. Now she wants to cooperate with Ji-young B to get more money, but they overestimated themselves and underestimated Daugh, a soldier who found oil at the cost of his life in the vast desert. Even a godlike existence in the International Intelligence Network. How could it be someone they could easily guess? In the early 80s, there was a case of burying a North Korean worker that shocked the world. At that time, the robbers killed all the hostages. Only the body of one person was not found. This person is the current Daugh. He was respected by the King of Saudi Arabia thanks to his extraordinary courage. He later received a title and territory. Although the king thought of every way to keep him here, he always had a certain feeling in his heart. He let Ho-Rim and his daughter pretend to act in front of him. The purpose was to catch the big fish behind and the traitor. While Ji-young-bi was satisfied with his calculations, suddenly a group of people dressed in black, of unknown origin, appeared intending to kill her. Luckily, Daugh was able to save her in time. Unexpectedly, his intention was to protect his daughter. Because Saudi Arabia's politicians have paid attention to his billions of assets for a long time, to prevent the unexpected, Ji-young-bi wants to seduce Ho-Rim and then fake real love. But on the other hand, Ji-young-a is still while holding 2 chicken legs to eat and drink beer. Abdallah protected her safety from afar. Looking at this stupid princess, his eyes became extremely warm. But after eating and drinking, Ji-young-a remembered she forgot to bring her wallet. Abdallah sighed and ran to help. He also sat down and pretended to eat noodles. Ji-young-a saw Abdallah as if she saw a savior. She walked over to ask but hesitated. Abdallah saw this. He had to find an excuse for her to help herself and then take the initiative to give her a tip. Ji-young was deeply moved. On this side, Ho-Rim hesitated for a long time. Finally, taking the excuse that his sick child successfully escaped from the tug-of-war with the goddess, he became completely confused. Ji-young came home to find that Abdallah had been following her forever. No matter how cleverly she refused, he stubbornly pretended not to understand. As long as she takes a step, he will follow it. Seeing Ho-Rim sneaking nearby, Abdallah patted Ji-young's shoulder goodbye and left with a sword. The next day, Ji-young-bi couldn't accept the truth, so she made an appointment to meet Ho-Rim again. Intentionally waited on Ji-young's way home. When she saw her target appear in front of, she immediately stood up, hugged Ho-Rim, and started kissing. But Ho-Rim just wants to date, not to have any other relationship with her. He never thought about abandoning his family. Ho-Rim saw that Abdallah could only tell the truth, that he was not a son-in-law. Now he only hoped to be forgiven by Ji-young-a. But even though he explained that it was to develop his work, Ji-young-a was so angry that she didn't listen to his nonsense. She tried to suppress the disappointment in her heart and calmly walked into the house. Ho-Rim was stunned by this, but looking at her helpless sobbing back, he could only sink into self-reproach and can't do anything. When Ji-young-bi arrived home, she thinking back about when Ji-young-a appeared and the power behind Daugh, and the fact that Ho-Rim's wife was also named Ji-young. An uneasy hypothesis suddenly appeared in her mind, so she called Yang. The answer was exactly what she thought. It turned out that the son-in-law was real, and she was the fake one. She couldn't accept the truth. How can an aunt who is despised by everyone be the lady of the tycoon family? At the same time, Daugh also spoke frankly with Abdallah. Daugh asked if Abdallah was your enemy, but Abdallah only said that you was my father's friend and that I admired you very much. Daugh gave a final warning, because you is my friend's son, so this is your last chance. Early the next morning, Ji-young tried to calm down to sit and talk to Ho-Rim. If that person out there was his true love, she would agree to divorce. Ho-Rim panicked and denied it immediately. Ji-young-a saw that, so she said that as long as he answered the truth, she would hold her anger in her fist, then pretend like it was nothing and forgive him. Ho-Rim, she definitely wouldn't get angry. Then he dared to tell the truth, but as soon as he mentioned the 2 words adultery, Ji-young lost control. Ho-Rim knew he was weak, so he didn't dare fight back. He let Ji-young fight and chase him from the living room to the bedroom. Now he just hopes his wife can quickly calm down. The next day, Daugh comes to find the detective. He wants revenge and finds out who is behind it. The detective takes a copy of the document and gives it to him. Did not expect that it was the National Intelligence Department. He clearly revealed his true identity and also revealed the Count's real name while in North Korea. The Intelligence Bureau will also quietly help Daugh with his entanglements with Saudi Arabia. Daugh opened the bag of secret documents. Inside was all the information about himself, a DNA test report, and a photo of his biological daughter. He saw that she was the aunt was drunk and suddenly stopped laughing. He thought to himself that there must have been a mistake. The next day, Ji-young had been wearing makeup for a long time to prepare for battle. But the person who has reached middle age has to endure many hardships of marriage. How can she compare with the arrogant female office worker? She strode into the building, all her anger now accumulated in the palm of her hand. Ji-young-bi saw that she was unusually calm, but a second later, her absolute confidence and overbearing crushed the angry Ji-young-a. In the fight between 2 women, whoever pays more attention will be hurt. hurt. After Ji Young-a left, Ji Young-bi smiled deeply. Ji Young-a went out the door and grabbed the railing but couldn't calm down. Ji Young-bi called Ho-rim again. Ji Young-a had no mother's house to return to. She returned to the orphanage, but the leaky house and rained all night. Even the old shoes that had been worn for 10 years were betraying their owner. Ho-rim received the appointment from the goddess and looked very thrilled, but it seemed that the other person was very calm. Because his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He used to be in love with the goddess, but he never thought he would hurt his wife. So he said he didn't want his child's mother to be heartbroken. But in reality, after many days of fake marriage and living together, he discovered their living habits and personalities and values do not have anything in common. Only now did he discover that he owed Ji Young-a, and he was determined to tell Daugh everything. But Ji Young-bi challenged him to do so because she knew she wasn't the real thing and he was just a pawn. Daugh personally went to the orphanage to learn about his daughter, but unexpectedly found out that his daughter has longed for her father since she was young. When other orphans realized they had no parents, only little, Ji Young stubbornly believed that her father would find her one day. So every time it gets dark, she sit under the tree and wait for 10 years. He felt very sorry for his daughter, but before the headmaster could finish speaking, he heard Ji Young loudly cursing the tree. Seeing such a sharp woman, Daugh frowned and didn't understand what was going on. The headmaster said that, if asked who was the best at gossiping and arguing at the orphanage, it would be Ji Young-a. After venting anger, Ji Young-a sat alone under a tree as usual. Daugh looked at his daughter from afar. Although he did not accept it completely, he could not resist the attraction of blood affection. He tried to appear calm and then walked behind his sly daughter and tore off a hair of her. This time, he wanted to confirm his daughter himself. He intentionally teased her when he saw Ji Young-a wearing old shoes. Ji Young-a looked at it embarrassed. She retracted her legs. She was finally waiting for her biological father after many years of separation, but now she still didn't know anything. Daug's cheers helped Ji Young-a to be comforted a little. Living in a world like this, everyone has to go through ups and downs, sweet or bitter. In fact, everyone is like that. She raised her head to try to stop the tears from falling. Daugh looked on with sadness. He invited Ji Young-a to leave with him, but was rejected by her. When he was about to leave, he returned to his daughter. He took off his shoes and left them for his daughter. He left barefoot. Ho-rim chased Ji Young-a to the orphanage. Even though he was very confused when he saw her wearing a pair of men's shoes, he didn't dare to ask much. He just obediently stayed next to her. Ji Young-bi started the next step. She proactively told Daugh the truth: she wasn't his daughter. Both sides understand clearly. When she saw he smiled coldly and didn't react, she probed again. She said that cutting off unnecessary relationships was the best policy. Unexpectedly, his unconscious actions made her delusional. The next day, Daugh got the DNA comparison results with Ji Young-a. She was certain that she was his biological daughter. He immediately became angry because his real son-in-law had been toying with him for many days. Daugh went straight to the bank where Ho-rim worked, made him so scared that he didn't dare breathe loudly. Unexpectedly, Daugh grabbed Ho-rim, go outside like a dog. Even though Ho-rim tried a clever trick to escape from his grasp, in the end couldn't escape from his feet. Ho-rim was carried into the car in a state of still not understanding anything, but at this moment Daugh had the urge to kill. He vowed to put this scum to life for his daughter. Ho-rim was scared and held onto the seatbelt and did not let go, and his mouth kept apologizing for being a fake son-in-law. But Daugh was extremely angry at this time. He didn't pay any attention to those words. Ho-rim was scared and kept apologizing. Ho-rim admitted that he always pretended to be his son-in-law in order to get achievements and not get fired. But the more he acted like that, the more Daugh became angry. Not only because of that, Ji Young-a changed her resigned natural the before. When her mother-in-law got used to sitting in front of her face, said, "I wanted grilled meat at night," but she deliberately mentioned her friend's husband's affair. Ji Young-a sarcastically said that she clearly knew everything, but pretended not to know, and ordered Ji Young-a to do the housework and asking for grilled meat. The mother-in-law continued to pretend not to understand and deliberately said 2 names of people to probe. Unexpectedly, Ji Young-a also said the friend's name, Kang Ho-rim, causing the mother to panic and say with stammering. The hurt Ji Young-a suddenly seemed to become a different person. The mother-in-law now felt like she was sitting on a pile of coals, listening to the words her daughter-in-law kept saying, which was compensation money and which was adultery. After hearing that, she was stunned and had no choice but to run away in anger. Right after that, Ji Young-a received a call from the hospital. She rushed out and even forgot to put on her shoes. The image of the baby's day appeared in her mind again, because it was also the hospital phone call. That was the pain that was forever hidden deep in her heart. After that call, her mother never came back to her side again. She was helpless and could only pray to God have mercy. Now encountering the same situation again, Ji Young-a unconsciously clenched her hands, hoping that her husband would be safe. At the hospital, Ho-rim was in a coma and laughed out loud. As soon as turned around, he was face to face with Daugh made him extremely scared. As soon as arrived at the hospital, what Ji-young-ae saw was a confusing scene. She didn't understand anything and thought Ho-rim was being bullied, and he saw Ji-young-ae, then immediately ran to her side. Ji-young-ae momentarily did not understand what was going on, only saw Daug's angry expression. Ho-rim stammered to tell the truth, but Daugh immediately grabbed him by the neck and refused to let him go. Abdallah stood next to stop Ji-young-ae so she wouldn't disturb Ho-rim and Daug's story, but Daugh was determined not to let Ji-young-ae know for really, so he threatened that if Ho-rim told the truth, he would definitely not be gentle anymore. After that fight, Ji-young-ae assumed that the collision and the action of hitting that person was caused by Daugh. To collecting evidence to use later, she asked for a phone number to contact Daugh. After the procedures were completed, Ji-young-ae immediately took Ho-rim home. Daugh was extremely satisfied with his child, because he thought his daughter was an idiot. He didn't expect her to be so smart. Ho-rim walked behind Ji-young. His heart was filled with happiness. He never dreamed that his wife in front of him was Daug's daughter, but when he thinking back, the personalities of those two people are identical. He couldn't help but tremble with fear. After returning home, Ho-rim started to play tricks. He set up a tent in front of the door to lie down and then turned to face the house. The scene of Ji-young cleaning the house seemed to be appearing before his eyes. He imagined the good life of his wife and children and then gradually fell asleep. Early in the morning, the mother-in-law began to constantly scold the daughter-in-law for letting husband sleep outside when her husband had just been in a car crash. Ji-young responded frankly, leaving her mother-in-law unable to answer back. Ho-rim thought that this time he might be able to reconcile, but unexpectedly his mother spoke up instead. Ji-young did not hesitate to respond, saying that your son would stay at your house in the future. Ji-young did not want to say any more and went straight to her room. Unexpectedly, Ho-rim and his mother quarreled again. One person complained out of embarrassment. The other explained it was my plan. Ji-young heard her daughter's laughter outside the window. The warm image of father and daughter became a weapon to force her hand to compromise. Perhaps this is also the difficult choice that women face when their marriage is not happy. Unfortunately, there is no way to keep yourself from being hurt. Abdallah quickly represented Daugh came to see Ji-young-ae with the excuse of taking back the leather shoes and told Ji-young-ae to personally go to the store to return it and give thanks. The moment Cinderella entered the palace of Gears of Fate also started to move and rewrote her life story. The table was full of delicious food for her, but this trip of hers only had two purposes. One was to return the shoes to Daugh. Two is to pay back hospital fees. However, Daugh sat and studied her five senses and analyzed them. Looking closely, she wasn't that old, especially her eyes, nose and mouth looked quite good. Daugh tried to find something beautiful on her face to compliment her. Ji-young misunderstood that he was making excuses for his daughter's mistakes. The more the two talked, the further they went. The conversation completely deviated from its original rhythm. Taking this opportunity, Daugh probed her daughter to see if she had air sickness or not. But Ji-young-ae had never been on a plane before. Daugh continued to probe to see if she had a passport, but Ji-young-ae considered that he was looking down on her. Daugh wanted to explain, but the more he explained, the more wrong it became. His two fingers kept moving back and forth, making Ji-young fling frustrated, so she grabbed his hand and twisted it back. Little girl, looking at her friend's parents, all coming to take their children home. In the end, there was only the little girl left. This small body could only cover her head with her bag. She was so used to running in the rain like this for a long time. 30 years later, that scene happened again. After a moment of confusion, Ji-young-ae ran into the rain again. Only this time, an umbrella suddenly appeared to shield her. The last gear of fate had began to lean more towards her. Little did she know that the person who opened the wheel of luck for her was the father she had been looking for 35 years. Daugh plans to hold a very grand ceremony to get his daughter back. Ho-rim will collude with his daughter to use every means to get Ji-young-ae out. After that, he secretly followed their journey. Daugh said that now, what are the specific steps to take? Ho-rim hopes that Ji-young-ae can meet all the green lights. Because her life, she has never had it easy so far. So hopefully in the future, her life can be more convenient. When Ji-young-ae took her daughter on the bus, these roads were usually very congested. Today, they are extremely clear. Daugh took Ho-rim to choose clothes for Ji-young-ae. Unexpectedly, that although he was a husband, he did not know what his wife liked. He had never even seen her buy clothes. Normally, when she was at home, she was always messy. Daugh was so angry that he wanted to kill Ho-rim immediately, so he decided to buy all the clothes at the store. Then 90% off, all waiting for Ji-young-ae to come and choose freely. Ho-rim was so surprised that he couldn't speak. Indeed, when Ji-young-ae saw the discount sign, she quickly went into the store to try it on. But Ho-rim insisted she is a stingy person, so she definitely won't spend money to buy it. But Abdallah said that before the mistress became an aunt, she was also a woman. Abdallah's words made Ho-rim unable to object. He even forgot that his wife was once a girl who loved beauty. Daugh offered to give her a bouquet of flowers to make Ji-young happy and proud in front of everyone. Daugh nervously observed Ji-young's reaction when receiving flowers. Unexpectedly, Ho-rim quickly arrived first and took advantage of this opportunity to please his wife. His daughter was even more wonderful. The little girl urged her parents to go out together quickly. Ho-rim won and rushed forward to hug Ji-young. Was angry and he sincerely apologized. Daugh in the car saw this scene and could only curse Ho-rim. Ji-young softened and finally accepted the flowers Ho-rim gave her. Ji-young on this side was still determined not to give up. She looking for a chance to approach Daugh. Of course Daugh won't refuse. Abdallah really can't look anymore, so he kindly reminds Daugh, a few days ago she was still your daughter, but from now on not anymore. While the two couples had a dinner that was served continuously make them surprise. The first is the wrong dish, then compensated with a plate of sweets food. Hearing that Ji-young was excited like a child, she hurriedly ate a large bite. Ho-rim asked if she liked to eat this dish. Ji-young innocently replied of course, as long as she was a woman, everyone would like it. Ho-rim was a bit disappointed. Even Ji-young had forgotten that she herself used to like to eat sweets food. Looking at Ji-young, Ho-rim's heart suddenly felt bitter, and then he took the opportunity to go out and report the situation to Daugh, but was misunderstood by Ji-young that he was in contact with Ji-young again. Ho-rim tried to explain, but the more he explained, the more wrong he became. The previous affair made Ji-young unable to trust him. Finally, Ji-young came to the conclusion that there was no cure. Daugh knew that Ho-rim had been scolded and was so happy that he proactively hugged Ji-young. Then Daugh planned the next step of the two people's development. What woman wouldn't be attracted to the charm of a successful man? When Ji-young was wondering whether she should continue this marriage, her house was full of precious things, ornaments cast in pure gold, a luxury car of unknown brand. There were so many of these items that it attracted also the surrounding neighbors to gather around to watch. When the mother-in-law and younger sister-in-law saw this scene, they were extremely stunned. A rich father fell from heaven. The whole yard is filled with luxury cars and precious items. But when Daugh excitedly said he was her father, Ji-young asked him what he was doing here. It was clear that the father of her husband's lover had come to recognize her as his daughter. Ji-young couldn't accept it for a while. Realizing that the situation wasn't right, Ho-rim took the opportunity to run away, but was called back by Daugh. Hearing that Ho-rim could only reluctantly stay, Ji-young started questioning suddenly. Daugh appeared after 35 years. The only thing she could think of was that he needed a heart, or he needs a liver, or maybe a kidney, or something like that. Daugh asked her if he didn't think he was very healthy. Ji-young then asked why he was Ji-young's father, and now he had become her father. Daugh angrily pointed at Ho-rim and accused him and Ji-young of pretending to be husband and wife to trick him. Without waiting for Ji-young to react, the two of them kept blaming each other. Ji-young pretended to calmly stand up and ordered to evict the guests. Looking at Ho-rim, she became even angrier. She directly kicked him out. As soon as Daugh stepped out, Ji-young's mother and younger sister-in-law were stopped him. Even if they dreamed, they didn't expect that their connection were rich. Both of them shamelessly flattered them. Daugh had to go against his conscience and praised them for being very beautiful and affectionate. After speaking, even he himself felt very nauseous. The mother-in-law even pushed her son towards Daugh so that the two could strengthen their relationship. The second day, Daugh and Abdallah tried to get Ji-young to return to the country, but Ho-rim outside overheard it. It turned out that Daug's purpose in getting his daughter back was to help him protect his property. So, even if he has to kidnap her and bring her back, he will do it. Otherwise, everything of his will turn to dust. After knowing the truth, Ho-rim immediately stood up to confrontation with Daugh. He knew how difficult it was for Ji-young to wait so many years for her father. Countless lonely afternoons she sat alone on the stump of a tree on the side of the road waiting. Daugh tried to hide his bitterness and pretended not to say anything, making Ho-rim unable to control anger. His current success was built by Ji-young's unhappy childhood. Her mother's lonely death made her an orphan, even now having to meet a scum like him, and she had to go through an extremely miserable life. Daugh couldn't listen anymore. However, Ho-rim continued to ask him if he took her away, would he live with her for the rest of his life? Daugh tacitly acknowledged Ho-rim's guess. In the end, he just threw it to Ji-young, a sum of money, and then continued to throw her away again. But Daugh is confident that he can give his daughter anything. While an adulterous adulterous husband like Ho-rim only wants a small amount of money, so pretend to be another woman's husband. What right do you have to judge me? The two of them continuously point out each other's bad points mercilessly. At this moment, Abdallah spoke up and said that both of them were not qualified to take responsibility. Both of them abandoned their wives and children for money. Abdallah's words made both of them speechless, but it seemed like what he said made sense, so Ho-rim immediately said he didn't need to worry. Ho-rim himself will be by her side to atone for his mistake. Ho-rim will not let her suffer any more pain. After Ho-rim promised, he immediately turned around and left. Daugh was very surprised by Ho-rim's actions. At this moment, he suddenly couldn't stand anymore. In a panic, he discovered that his baton was nowhere to be found. Ho-rim was now extremely sorry for his wife. His eyes were red with tears, on the verge of tears pouring out. Ji-young stayed up all night looking back at the letters she and her mother sent when they were children. The image of mother and daughter relying on each other seemed like it was only yesterday. Each stamp was carefully affixed, was the hope that she and her mother had for the father. But unfortunately, that lover was no longer there. The daughter-in-law, who was often bullied, suddenly became a tycoon's lady. The sister-in-law began to change attitude and tried to flatter her, even taking out the trash because she was afraid her sister-in-law would be tired. The mother-in-law heard the noise and went out to join her daughter. The purpose was to ask what Daugh was doing. Ji-young didn't care about them and turned around and left. Before she could think clearly, Abdallah came to block her path. He told her about Daug's current situation. It's true that Daugh has a huge fortune that is hard to imagine, but there are also many people who want to overthrow him to rob them all. The appearance of his family at this time makes him need to protect another person, but no matter how much Abdallah tries to convince Ji-young, couldn't easily resolve the problems in her heart. As Daug's daughter, no matter where she went, there were bodyguards following her around. This also made Ji-young very upset. Didn't wait for her to sit down. Daugh called over. He wanted her to bring the baton at her house to him, but the more Daugh showed her love for it, the more Ji-young wanted to make things difficult for him. So two people with identical hot tempers started arguing over the phone. Daugh was angered to the point of madness by Ji-young. The two arranged to meet at a coffee shop. Daugh froze when he saw Ji-young's mother's appearance from her. Time passed so quickly. Back then, they were still impulsive children. Daugh seemed to have returned to before. He immediately walked over and suddenly called his wife's name, making Ji-young was surprised. As soon as I got home, the items on the bill were scattered all over the yard. Her mother-in-law and younger sister-in-law were so happy that they couldn't stop laughing. Ji-young calmly replied, "This is the previous dowry, she hadn't gotten it yet." Then she told her mother-in-law not to make things difficult for her in the future. After saying that, she went straight to her room. Ho-rim knew that Ji-young took so much money from Daugh, so he blamed her for doing that. Could it be that she didn't have self-esteem? She doesn't hesitate to say that she's self-esteem was trampled by mother-in-law 10 years ago, so you don't have that anymore. Ho-rim sees Ji-young like that. He didn't know what to say, but the man in black outside the door started to act. That night, Ho-rim took the initiative to tell his daughter a story before going to sleep. He patiently coaxed his daughter to sleep. Ji-young listened to the father and daughter talk. It's a story that's hard to describe. In the early 80s, countries were almost crazy about oil exploitation, in which of course it is indispensable that Daugh went to Saudi Arabia to take risks. Under the intense heat, Daugh was close to death and was about to be swallowed by the desert, but suddenly discovered a gift from God, which was billions of wealth pouring out continuously, so his life reached its peak. Even the entire Saudi Arabia had to respecting him. 35 years later, Daugh returned home to find the daughter he had never met, but things happened beyond his expectations. The object of his son-in-law's affair turned towards him. This person wanted to borrow his hand, took a step toward the clouds, perhaps because hormones affected the magnetic waves. Daug's eyes looking at Ji-young, erratic transformation. The next day, Ji-young came to find Ji-young to apologize. At the same time, she also bent 90 degrees, hoping that Ji-young would ignore the old story and talk normally. Before that, Ji-young went to Ho-rim and told him to advise Ji-young to sign a contract as a screenwriter for JJ. She praised Ji-young for having outstanding writing talent. JJ is the top entertainment group in the country. Being in JJ is every writer's dream. Ho-rim, sitting next to Ji-young, didn't know how to say anything. Unexpectedly, Ji-young had received an invitation from director JJ a long time ago. Both of them implicitly remembered Ji-young. Ho-rim said that he met Ji-young during the day. The thing he cares most about is still Ji-young's thoughts. Ho-rim agrees to do all the housework so Ji-young can pursue her dream. Abdallah stands outside closely monitoring the situation at home. As soon as he turned around, he discovered someone in black was sneaking outside. Seeing that Saudi Arabia's time for Daugh was about to end, Ji-young used the excuse to help Daug's daughter fulfill her dream of luring Daugh into buying JJ. After handling all the difficulties, Daugh prepared to invest a large sum to optimize and expand JJ's targets in all aspects. He vowed to create a Hollywood in Korea, and the company's shareholders were extremely excited. Only Ji-young didn't know what to do and stood there dumbfounded. Unexpectedly, the rich father she didn't want to accept was now the boss sitting on her head. Ji-young knew the truth and wanted to cancel the contract, but she could not pay the huge amount of contract violation. Ji-young wanted to sell the apartment and bookstore Daugh bought for her to compensate for the breach of contract, but she learned that these assets were not yet in her name. Ji-young angrily left. Daugh arbitrarily decided to announce Ji-young's identity in a few days. Ji-young expressed her attitude determined not to accept her father even if she died. Ji-young's aggressiveness hit Daug's weak point. He immediately said that only she could keep her property. Ji-young was stunned for a long time. She still couldn't calm down. Only Abdallah knew that that wasn't what Daugh meant. But the two equally stubborn father and daughter kept accidentally hurting each other. Ji-young burst into tears in pain. Daugh sat in the car for a long time, but he couldn't calm down. He sent Abdallah to follow Ji-young to make sure she got home safely. As soon as Daugh reached the parking lot, Saudi Arabia's assassin sent to block the way. He calmly inquired, but his movements were quick and decisive. It was clear that this group of people were scared by him. Using only one stick, he was able to kill this group of people. Immediately afterwards, Daugh suddenly feeling dizzy. Abdallah promptly brought someone over. After briefly asking about Ji-young's situation, Daugh was unable to stand and fell to the ground. Ji-young learned that although she appeared calm on the outside, she took out her mother's old photo and burst into tears. It seemed like two voices were arguing in her heart. Her mother gently advised her to let out all the worries in her heart. Even though she tried her best to resist, she couldn't be indifferent with a lingering feeling in her heart. This made her extremely sad. Ji-young took the opportunity to visit Daugh. Her crying appearance could not hide her evil intentions. Daugh seemed to laugh, but did not give her an answer. Ji-young stayed at home to work continuously to relieve her mood, but her mother-in-law enthusiastically took over the housework. Her mother-in-law was afraid that she was tired, so she told her to go to the sofa to rest. Her younger-in-law also came early in the morning and thoughtfully told Ji-young to focus on writing script. Ho-rim hides Ji-young to visit Daugh, but as soon as he opens his mouth, he makes people hate him. He says Daug's enemies are everywhere, making Daugh angry. Ho-rim didn't know, so he was saying was a fatherly love that made the Earl embarrassed to chase and beat him for a fight. At this time, Ji-young also came to visit. Daugh saw this and pretended to faint, making Ji-young very panicked. But Ho-rim exposed it and said he was just joking. Daugh kicked a shot at Ho-rim to warning. After Ji-young nervously checked, Daugh was finally put to bed. The two men didn't say it, but at the same time they loved the stupid Ji-young next to them. Daugh opened his mouth and acted coyling for Ji-young to feed him food. But unexpectedly, she gave him a pair of chopsticks, so Daugh had to hold the chopsticks. He was dissatisfied and started playing a trick. He pretended to be shaking and couldn't pick up the food. When Ho-rim saw that he was also upset, and Daugh didn't pay attention to anyone and continued to pretend, so Ho-rim directly took the food to feed him. Daugh tried to suppress the desire to kill Ho-rim. Ho-rim stuffed each piece of food into his mouth, afraid that Ji-young would discover a clue. For the first time, he felt the concern of daughter Daugh, sincerely apologizing to her for what happened the other day. Ji-young persisted in her decision not to go to Saudi Arabia. The simple reason was that she did not want to do anything that would benefit Daugh. Perhaps because of age, Daugh didn't threaten her anymore. In addition to those who are always plotting their own interests, there is also Yang from Saudi Arabia, who secretly competes with the National Security Agency. Unexpectedly, her every move was held in the palm of hand by the detective. Ji-young finally took the position of Daugh's guardian. When they arrived at the hospital for a follow-up checkup, their identical auras made the father and son obviously care about each other a little closer. Invisibly, the baton opened up a topic of conversation between the two of them. For Daugh, it is said that Baton is the best friend with him through danger. The desert not only hides black oil, but also poisonous insects such as scorpions, venomous snakes, and centipedes. It's even scarier if there is no water and food or lost direction. At times like that, the walking stick is the only friend that helps Daugh stand. The father and daughter, who have been separated for 35 years, rarely talk like a normal father and daughter. Daugh is not good with words and always plays tricks to make his daughter happy. Daugh lay in the scanner constantly thinking about the times he met Ji-young. He really couldn't feel secure about her married life, so he rushed into the bank and dragged Ho-rim out. He decided to give Ho-rim a big gift to help him immediately be promoted to bank branch manager. But first he had to get a divorce. He promised to give Ho-rim a future. Even if Ho-rim strives for another 30 years, he doesn't dare to think about it. as long as Ho-rim is willing to let go of Ji Young-ae. No matter what, Daugh doesn't want to entrust Ji Young-ae to this bad guy anymore. Not related to Ji Young-ae's thoughts, but simply Daug's self-esteem is unacceptable, considered as the cost of compensating for Ho-rim's mental loss upon divorce. For Ji Young-ae, Daugh used the plan to provoke the general. As long as she appears with him as his daughter at the Wire purchasing press conference JJ, in the future she can choose to make Daugh disappear forever from her life. Ji Young, a thought for a moment, then agreed. Everything seemingly peaceful, but secretly making waves. Yang Yan came to find Ji Young and ordered her to lure the person next to Ji Young-ae to leave during the press conference. Otherwise, the 3 billion won that transferred before to her would be withdrawn. The press conference took place as expected. Daugh was plotting a big plan. For the first time, he admitted his true identity in Korea. This shook the stock market, but compared to losing all his assets, Daugh was forced to take this risky move. Ho-rim was by his side to help Ji Young relieve stress. At this time, Ji Young used an excuse to find him to hide something. Daugh told media about the person he loved in the past. Although the two of them could not be together, she unfortunately passed away. But she also gave birth to a daughter for Daugh. Ji Young-ae was so nervous that her heart wanted to jump out of her chest. Suddenly, a man appeared to confirm Ji Young-ae's identity. Daugh hadn't seen his daughter and rushed in to check. Yang Yang saw that the job had been successful and left with pride. The detective lost track of Yang Yang's location, fortunately saw the scene of Ji Young-ae being arrested through the camera in the building. Daugh became angry. Ji Young-ae's disappearance made him lose control and hate Ho-rim extremely. Daugh ordered Abdallah to ask the National Security Agency for help. Ho-rim really wanted to do something but couldn't do anything. Yang Yang cut the rope that tied Ji Young-ae's legs. Just keep her here for 3 more days and everything will work. Ji Young-ae gradually calmed down and determining that Yang Yang was the target to be deal. Yang Yang cried out pitifully for life, but Ji Young-ae still had difficulty calm down her anger. So Ji Young-ae grabbed Yang Yang's hair and beat her. When everything was over, Daugh did not forget to reminded Ho-rim to carefully consider his proposal. Looked at his unprogressive daughter. Daugh was angry but couldn't do anything. That night, Ji Young was still afraid and had removed the problem with Ho-rim. The warmth made Ji Young-ae's emotions calm down a bit, and then she buried herself in Ho-rim's arms and slept soundly. Ho-rim lay awake all night. He was worried that today's incident would happen again, and he was unable to protect Ji Young-ae. In the end, Ho-rim accepted Daug's proposal. Daugh asked Ho-rim because he was not confident in being able to protect her or because he was satisfied with the gift that Daugh offered more. Ho-rim went home and expressed his feelings. Ji Young-ae thought of her child first. Unexpectedly, Ho-rim had thought ahead. Instead of living in this poor place, her daughter could go to school, majoring in ballet, which the little girl likes. Not in amateur extra classes. She can also live a better quality life instead of following her father, who can't afford a princess dress like him. And she also no longer needs to spend cautiously and struggle to make a living. As long as she wants, all her previous luxury dreams can be easily fulfilled. The first time she heard him constantly degrading and mocking himself, Ji Young-ae was heartbroken and shed tears. The most unforgettable memories suddenly rushed back to her. Marriage is the only opportunity in life for a woman to choose for herself. Choose a family member. If you choose the wrong other half, then the rest of your life will also be wrong. You will experience all the sufferings of life. Dilemmas. Someone appears in your life to help you feel that life is beautiful and make you shine, but someone will blow out all the light in your life. So women may not be happy, but can't help but be sober. Ji Young hesitated and quickly chased after went out to check if Ho-rim abandoned his wife and children. Ho-rim now only hopes that his wife and children can live better. Daugh stands and watches the two from afar. She asks him why he thinks the father never appeared in the past 35 years has been better than him. It's not that Ji Young-ae doesn't like money, but to her Ho-rim is family. Family cannot be separated. Ji Young-ae stubbornly asked Ho-rim to stay with her, making it impossible for him to deceive himself anymore. Daugh was moved when he saw the couple playing in front, and what was waiting for him was that all the assets in Saudi Arabia were being contributed to the public fund. Now he became a miserable poor man. Rich Daugh became poor overnight, so he came to stay with his daughter, who was bullied all year round by her husband's family. This surprised Ji Young-ae, so she quickly spread knowledge to him and told him not to let her mother-in-law know that he had nothing left. Unexpectedly, as soon as met, Daugh had already settled the accounts with her cruel mother-in-law. A whole bunch of food bills added up to 2 billion won. Daugh asked for 2 billion as a dowry for his daughter. He began to demand justice for his daughter. When they got married, there was no wedding, no jewelry, not even a bride price. He talked a lot, making the cruel mother-in-law confused and faltering in her defense half a day. But Daugh did not ignore her and criticized her for always treating his daughter harshly. Daugh told her to stay away from his daughter in the future. then said that he would be here for the time being. Ho-rim quickly found the bank manager to ask for his resignation letter back. When he learned that the resignation letter had not yet been submitted, he was as happy as a child and tore up the letter and quickly started working. When he came home from work and saw his father-in-law in the house, Ho-rim was startled. Seeing Abdallah suddenly come out made him even more startled. Ho-rim quickly went to find his wife, but found out that Daugh was now poor. Daugh grabbed Ho-rim back and said he had nothing left. Daugh warned Ho-rim now can't get any more his money. The two people, not very friendly, agreed, not mentioning anything about Daugh, forcing the two to divorce before Abdallah quickly becoming Ji-young-ae's capable housewife. Father and daughter sat down to eat together for the first time in their lives. Through their words, it could be seen that Daugh was really excited, saw that Ji-young-ae picked up food for her child, Daugh, and also learned follow. He gave Ji-young a shrimp, but didn't know she was allergic to shrimp. Daugh felt guilty and tried to pick up the shrimp again, but Ji-young-ae insisted on eating it. This was the love her father had longed for. After swallowing, the two father and daughter looked at each other and laughed. They both felt the other's heart. After eating, Ji-young-ae had an allergic reaction and itched all over her body, but in her heart was very sweet. Ji-young-bi looked at herself in the mirror with the ugly inside hidden behind her angelic face. Even she hated herself so much. A devastated Ji-young-bi finally remembered her mother, but when she went to the sanatorium, only the cold urn of ashes remained. The day her mother passed away was the same day that for money she went against her conscience and led Daugh to Ji-young-ae's mother's grave to pay her respects. She broke down and cried loudly, blaming her mother for leaving that day. Until now, she was still only thinking about herself. Looking at the notebook left on the table, every page recorded how much her mother missed her. Countless nostalgia and repentance to the end could not wait. Don't try to change a person's heart, but know how to quickly stop hurting. Don't waste your bright life because of someone who doesn't deserve it. The Saudi Arabian princess came from afar to report that the Saudi prime minister was plotting to participate in politics. Not only hired foreign forces to capture Daugh's daughter, but also encouraged all members of the National Assembly to vote for approval. Expropriate Daugh's oil fields and assets, contributed to the public fund. Daugh is the king's only hope. Daugh also expressed his heart to Saudi Arabia that once gave him glory. He can give up his property and dignity, or even his life. The princess heard that extremely worried. She just wanted the man she beloved to be safe and happy. But what Daugh said next made her feel secure. Very quickly, the news of Daugh's bankruptcy occupied all the news sites, and the mother-in-law and younger sister-in-law changed their attitude immediately. Daugh used his own way to relieve his daughter's sadness. Ji-young-ae was more concerned about his head injury many years ago. The father and daughter talked about Daugh when he was young, at that time when his head was seriously injured, but there was no treatment. It was also in that escape from the Delph that he discovered the oil field as a miracle. Ji-young-ae was curious if she had any other half-siblings. Daugh tried to deny. There was only one reason. He sadly looked at Ji-young-ae. It seemed like the woman he loved was right now sitting between two. If time could stop at this beautiful moment. The two men who were by Ji-young-ae's side every day. Each person said a sentence so that she couldn't write. Neither of them was observant. One sings and vocal harmony performs according to the script. Ji-young-ae was so angry that she scolded the two of them when out. Ji-young-ae was about to explode, so she had to do was complain to her friend that her rich father had just appeared not long ago and suddenly became poor. She thought that this time she had a place in her husband's family, but she didn't expect to have more a nuisance. No matter what Ji-young-ae said, the dean always smiled and looked at her. Even Ji-young-ae did not expect that she had been talking about Daugh for 2 hours. As the saying goes, because of the mind, so it is mentioned all the time. On the outside, she seems resentful and complains, but in reality she always misses. But fate seems to be teasing this father and child. Daugh is deliberately hiding his illness. He intends to stay at Ji-young-ae's house for a few more days and then left. Ji-young-ae asked him how the test results were. Daugh pretended to calmly say he was very healthy, but inside Ji-young-ae vaguely felt uneasy. She quickly took the identity of a family member and went to the hospital to ask again, and found out that Daugh had Alzheimer's disease due to a severe head injury when he was young and added pressure and melancholy recently, which led to the cause to illness. It seemed that fate had a grudge against Ji-young-ae. It was difficult for her to see her father again, but the reunion would be short-lived, causing her to fall from heaven to the bottom of the abyss like a roller coaster. Ji-young-ae burst into self-pity, crying. She never thought about how rich her father was, nor how handsome and cool he was. She only wanted a father, but this small wish also became a distant thing. Ji-young-ae pity for because Daugh endured his illness alone. Although she resented her father very much, this moment turned into endless pain. Daugh sat in front of his daughter's workplace and refused to leave. He tried to remember everything first eyes. place, because he was afraid that he would forget everything about Ji-young-ae at night. Ji-young-ae knocked on Daug's door and took out the gift she had prepared for him. Although it was not a brand name, it was a gift from many years ago. She wanted to buy it but couldn't afford it. Everyone said that when received her first month's salary, they would buy underwear for parents. This was also her distant dream. Ji-young-ae used her first month's salary as a writer to buy for Daug's underwear that she had been eyeing for a long time. Daugh took out a pair of red underwear from it, abundant affection expressed in words. He really liked this and even politely thanked his daughter. Ji-young-ae tried to hold back her tears and quickly left, but her father called her back. Daugh posed to make her happy. At this moment, love quietly filled the father and daughter. Ji-young-ae couldn't hold back anymore. Tears poured out like rain. Ho-rim heard her cry and was extremely sad. That night, Daugh did not sleep, but sat looking at the bright moon outside the window. He felt feeling happiness like never before. The lonely rich uncle has Alzheimer's disease. The only thing he is not assured about is his daughter's marriage. Daugh intentionally wakes Ho-rim up in the middle of the night while learning about how he fell in love and married Ji-young and made Ho-rim drunk. Ho-rim didn't understand, so he drank one drink after another, but Daugh had no intention of stopping. He just coldly watched Ho-rim drink it to him until he passed out. Pity for the hearts of parents. Daugh used his own method to make Ho-rim tell the truth while drunk. Ho-rim said he considered Ji-young-ae a natural presence in his life, which natural to the point that he ignored her preciousness, and he never thought about the suffering that this marriage would bring to her. Ho-rim promised that he would do everything in the future and ask for flour. Daugh gave him another chance. Who would have thought that this method would make Daugh realize that in the past, he also used this method to trick Ji-young-ae. It is true that the older the ginger, the spicier it gets. With his eloquence, he only used a few sentences to lure Ho-rim. Ho-rim faltered and emphasized that these were his sincere words. Thought he had easily passed the truth-telling test, but unexpectedly, there were still many harsh physical training sessions waiting. This made Ho-rim, who was already weak, extremely miserable. After a few physical exercises, Ho-rim was extremely tired, but Daugh had no intention of forgiving him. Ho-rim was extremely embarrassed when he went to work, but even though his body has reached its limit because of his salary, he still has to persevere in his job until the end. Daugh, regardless of the past, went to Ji-young-ae and told her directly that she was a cactus without even knowing it. Perhaps seeing himself when he was young, Daugh felt that she was just risking her life to run forward. From then on, forgetting about the people she grew thorns in, and even some people were pierced by her thorns and bleeding. Daugh's difference from ordinary people deeply admired Ji-young-ae, who always struggled alone at the top of the pyramid. At the same time, she also guessed that Daugh knew from the beginning that she was not his biological child. Daugh said as a father, he cannot have male-female feelings when meeting his daughter. Ji-young-ae looked at the man who had given her so much care in front of her, her heart suddenly wavering. Even though it was no matter what a girl is, her subconscious actually wants to be recognized by Daugh and also wants to be with him. Ji-young-ae sincerely apologizes for putting Ji-young-ae in danger. She didn't expect things to turn out like this. Daugh gave her a business card, which was the thing he promised to give her wings. Ji-young-ae was now filled with passionate love for the man in front of her, but Daugh tactfully refused. Now his memory is not clear. Perhaps the next time he meets him, he will no longer recognize the person in front of him. But he does not know that Ji-young-ae has known about his illness for a long time. Daugh's remaining savings were taken over and managed by Ji-young-ae, only giving him and Abdallah 130,000 each month. Ji-young specifically instructed her daughter to practice multiplication with her grandfather every day from now on. If he is wrong, she must snap his head. Daugh saw that and knew he was being forced into a routine, but he just listened. Seeing that Ji-young-ae accidentally called him dad, Daugh quickly confirmed. But what Abdallah was more worried about was that now they had no money left, but Daugh was excited like a child. Because of that, so every month, he feels the joy of having pocket money. Abdallah suddenly becomes a hard-working professional family nanny. Daugh evaluates the toilet, devoting himself to thinking about how to do finished quickly. As a result, he threw a few buckets of water and was about to go out when Ji-young blocked the door and forced him to turn back. Finally, after changing a sentence, Daugh heroically declared that he must turn the toilet into a toilet 7-star hotel after a series of destructive actions, although he was very serious and did not miss any corner. When Ji-young opened the door, she almost went crazy. Daugh even asked for more money. The first time Daugh went to the sauna, he saw Abdallah wearing a goat horn scarf on his head. Daugh continuously criticized and laughed at Abdallah for being stupid and curiously put it on his own head. Then he even took a selfie with Abdallah and posted it online. Ho-rim saw the two of them and felt like they were dreaming. While Ji-young wanted to create some more beautiful memories, Ji-young tried her best to drag dragged Daugh, who was afraid of the heat, into the sauna. But the beautiful scenery did not last long. Saudi Arabia's prime minister was convicted. Daugh's oil field and assets were all returned. But he remembered Ji Young once said that even if he had no money, she would still like him. So Daugh agitated and tried to return all his assets to society. He thought that this way Ji Young would like him more, but forgot that his daughter was stingy. Ji Young got mad. Abdallah also resented him for not negotiating with his family. Hurrem felt that Daug's illness was getting worse, so the two of them started arguing. Ji Young was extremely upset with them, but Daugh really didn't know him what he did wrong. Ji Young said everyone admired her for becoming rich. She didn't understand why Daugh had to give money to others. But even though Daugh explained that if he returned assets to society, it doesn't mean he will become poor. But Ji Young still feels uncomfortable because Daugh decided on such a big deal. After saying that, she immediately kicked out the guests. Daugh was kicked out of the house by his daughter. Suddenly returning to the life of the richest family made him suddenly a bit unfamiliar. Eating alone made him feel empty. So Daugh asked Abdallah to move half of the chairs, but even so, he still felt uncomfortable. Then he called everyone to eat together, but the result was still not delicious. At this side, Ji Young had prepared breakfast early in the morning. She still laid out the eating utensils for 5 people. Hurrem was happy because Daugh had left. He could breathe a sigh of relief. But as soon as he finished speaking, Ji Young retorted. She had endured her mother-in-law for 15 years without saying anything, so she did not allow him talking about her father like that. Hurrem kept apologizing. Ji Young spends her free time online looking for articles related to Alzheimer's syndrome. Daugh was at home waiting for her to call, so frantically and frustrated. As soon as he saw Ji Young calling, he hurriedly pretended to save face, but just heard Ji Young say she wanted to check on his recovery status lately. He immediately told her to come over and check right away. Not seeing what Ji Young said, Daugh quickly added another sentence, or he could come to her house now. Ji Young smiled and told him to keep practicing. What he was told before was fine. Wait a week before going for a follow-up examination. Daugh was flatly rejected on the phone. The next day, Daugh started sending a series of concerned messages to his daughter. Sometimes in the JJ building was on fire. The murderer escaped from prison. But Ji Young only answered yes. She finally experienced the feeling of hearing her father say so many things that she had always wanted for the past 35 years. Looking at her, it seemed like he was criticizing Daugh for being annoying, but his eyes were filled with happiness and pride. Unexpectedly, Daugh chased her all the way to the traditional medicine store, pretending to pass by, and went in to greet Ji Young. Daugh bragged about his achievements today. Didn't expect that the comment section under the last photo post online were all asking for money. Everyone wanted to suddenly have a father-in-law like Daugh. Very soon came the day of the test. Ji Young comforted Daugh first that she would not let outsiders change his diapers in the future. After hearing this, Daugh was startled. If that day came, he would resolutely protect his pride. He would absolutely not involve his daughter. Then he will leave this place forever. But how could Ji Young abandon her father? Perhaps it was God's favor that Daugh's re-examination results denied Alzheimer's. The door to happiness officially opened for Ji Young. Daugh needed a year to travel to the US to adjust JJ's overseas development project. He wanted to take this opportunity to take Ji Young abroad to study more to fulfill his daughter's dream. This time, Hurrem tried his best to support his wife and promised that he would also make efforts to improve and take care of family and daughter. But surprisingly, Daugh suddenly gave Hurrem the position of financial administrator of an overseas development project, as if giving him a chance to prove himself. Unexpectedly, Hurrem did not thinking anything and refusing. He will prove it with his efforts. This action makes Daugh have a different view of him. In the blink of an eye, a year has passed, and the director received a postcard from Ji Young sent. Even though she was about to return home, she still wanted to use this method to let the director feel her change. Each photo conveys the countless efforts of Ji Young, a 36-year-old woman who escaped from the bondage of family. She finally relied on her talent to change her previous miserable life. The present exudes the beauty of knowledge, confident and liberal temperament, condensing positive energy in the air. Major television stations scrambled to interview her about her talented but late successful article. In another side, Hurrem and family joined hands to actively work every day and not stop improving himself. In the company, he plays a very important role. Success quietly knocks on the door. Although the couple is far apart, they are both trying for a good life. Moreover, in the interview, Ji Young thanked her husband for his support. Hurrem put all his feelings for his wife into his deep love for his daughter. Suddenly one day, Hurrem dressed formally to go to the company, preparing for the upcoming date. Everyone in the group thought he was having an affair. Only Byung-tae silently encouraged him. Ho-rim checked the time and rushed to school to pick up his children when he suddenly discovered two parents is making fun of Ji-young-ae's father, who is an oil billionaire. They also say that she gave her children to her husband and left, that she is nothing but has a hot temper. Write a few articles indiscriminately to become a writer. Ho-rim can't listen anymore. He angrily went to confront the two women. What if the father picks up the child? The mother can give birth to the child. Can the father not pick up the child? If your husband doesn't pick up the child, it doesn't mean it's someone else same. Then he asked the two people who knew his wife. Did they know her personality, or had they ever talked to her? How could they say such nonsense? Suddenly, Ji-young-ae appeared and listened to all the conversation. On the way home, no matter how Ji-young-ae started the conversation, Ho-rim was only cold, making Ji-young-ae not know what to do. Ho-rim saw this and laughed silently. Going into room, Ji-young-ae couldn't stand it anymore. Today is her birthday. Not only did she not hear any congratulations, but she also had to look at his cold face the whole way. It turned out that Ho-rim wanted to give her a surprise, but unexpectedly, he hadn't finished preparing yet, so it ended up like this. Everyone is extremely embarrassed. Daugh really can't stand this son-in-law who is so bad at everything he does. Ho-rim can't pretend anymore. He hadn't seen his wife for a year, so he missed his wife, wanted to go crazy. At this moment, a little boy suddenly appeared. As soon as he opened his mouth, he called Daugh dad. Everyone was surprised by the boy's appearance. The boy reminded Daugh his mother was a girl, having met him when he was in Turkey 12 years ago. Daugh quickly avoided the problem. He didn't know how to explain to Ji-young-ae. He only said his father was not married, not that he had no children. To congratulate Daug's journey to get his daughter back was successful, he called all his relatives to board a private plane to visit Saudi Arabia. Unexpectedly, they encountered a storm on the way. The plane was damaged and eventually lost control and crashed into the sea. The whole group of people were washed onto a deserted island by the ocean waves. They heard howls on the island, and for a moment everyone was stunned. This is the end of the movie. If you find it good, please give us a like so we can be motivated, make a better video.